eventually, and hopefully this is going to be a place where all of us and all practitioners of motivational interviewing can gather and share knowledge, share experience, share practice, and discuss other areas around motivational interviewing, or otherwise known as MI. Real quick overview here. Motivational interviewing is a guiding style of communication. It truly does sit in between good listening and walking beside someone. The heart of MI really is it's about empowering people to change. There's a fundamental premise that all people come to us, all clients, all folks come to us with their change inside of them. They are the experts of their own lives. MI is also based on this really respectful, kind of curious way of being with people. It's a particular way, I think, at the foundation of that. We are getting into the foundation of that today and next week through the exploration of the spirit of MI. One of the things that we really have been talking about in terms of motivational interviewing, we've been in Grand Ronde, we've been spent times in Chiloquin with the Klamath tribes, we have spent time at Cow Creek with a few Southern folks. Now we're getting prepared for Umatilla. We're very excited about spending some time with you all. One of the things that we really believe in when it comes to motivational interviewing, right, is that it is a practice that provides an opportunity for us to communicate with those that we serve, right, by breathing a little life into the way that we communicate. When I first came onto this journey of learning about MI, one of the key learnings that struck me the most was, we're talking about an evidence-based practice, right? That's a loaded term. We're talking about an evidence-based practice that at the foundational level maintains what's called the spirit. And in our teachings and in our ways, if something has a spirit, then it's alive. We only hope, and I hope that we can proctor and guide and stand beside you all as you develop your own relationship with motivational interviewing in your community and with those people that you serve. The spirit of MI really is just 4 components. This is Kevin's piece. I don't want to steal Kevin's thunder, but this really is the spirit of MI. It's foundational, 4 components: partnership, empowerment, acceptance, and compassion. One of the ways that I think about the spirit of MI is that it really is an opportunity. We're inviting in a particular practice that helps us guide folks in a conversational manner. With that said, I would like to turn the floor over to our colleague and to our mentor, our MI mentor, Kevin Tomlin, Cheyenne River Sioux, and also certified mint trainer. So
Thanks,
with
Kevin.
that, I turn it over.
Kevin Tomlin here. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's me or Kevin that's the minion. I remember seeing that show. I'm gonna have to rewatch it. I have a little one. He's about to get obsessed with all of that stuff, so he's gonna figure out that there's a minion with his dad's name. Takoyase. My name is Kevin. I'm a tribal member from the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe descendant and tribal enrolled member. My auntie Kathleen, my dad's sister, has been in a behavioral health field since I was born. She's retired now and trying to let go of it. And one thing that she learned early on was the walking with people in a way that is human, that expresses empathy, that has respect, that things that she grew up with. you know, just all the good things about how to be as a person. She became an addictions professional in the 70s, right when all that was starting, and saw pretty quick that that's not how they were operating in that world of addictions treatment. That it was just different than that. It was there was a lot of confrontation, which makes sense if you think of, like, if you can imagine the behaviors that people are coming up against if they're trying to help somebody who's trying to get sober from substance use. You know, it can be what they used to call them difficult people. In our training now, I'm a counselor by trade, and they're very careful now that we can talk about difficult cases, difficult behaviors, and the people are simply human beings. They're human beings who perhaps have difficult behaviors. And that motivational interviewing started being developed in the 80s after a counselor came into that field of addictions, not knowing that he was supposed to be confrontational. And he started being empathic and person-centered and really meeting people where they're at, and had very different outcomes. So in many ways, what we're talking about in motivational interviewing is not so much a manualized paradigm or a manualized set of rules for how to do your job. It's not it at all. In fact, I'm really curious, anytime that we do a training event with motivational interviewing, it gets adapted to the work that's being done at that place. So in this case, what I heard even when we got started off, thank you for getting us started in that good way. I heard disproportionality, I heard families, I heard children, and that's who we're working with, and that's what we're working with. And that somehow the idea is that this way of being called motivational interviewing will be useful somehow in helping address that disproportionality. I'm going to share my screen here a little bit. Our hope here is that, you know, these noon, we have 2 sessions, right? There'll be this one, and then there's one a week from now. So I'm kind of just riffing, knowing that we do have a little time. There's going to be one next week as well. Put off my alarm here. That we thought it would be good to just start a conversation before we have these training events that are coming up in April, where we really dive into the mechanics, the details of motivational interviewing. We get to be there in person and do some exercises and really try it on for size. And beforehand, we thought it would be good to talk about just the spirit of motivational interviewing. So I'm going to share my screen here and tip our hand. This is a screenshot of all the slides you're going to get, and you will get them. You're going to get hard copies of these. These are all the slides of our presentation. How many we got here? 81. You do not need to know any of this today. We start this, so there's a lot of content, a lot of material. It's kind of geared toward counselors, but we adapt it to working with people. Anybody facing a change from a motivational interviewing point of view, they probably have mixed feelings about that change. And that's really what MI is about working with somebody who's facing a change and who thinks 2 ways about it, is ambivalent about it. So here, I wanted to focus in on one particular slide because there's an image out of the basic text entitled Motivational Interviewing that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about, that it is a way of being with a person who has mixed feelings about wanting to change. And that research shows that there are basically 4 components to that spirit. You'll see these top 3 circles. They say compassion, collaboration, and acceptance. That's the basics of counseling, right? That's where the person who designed this was a counselor. There's a famous counselor named Carl Rogers, you may have heard of, from the 50s and 60s and 70s, who's famous for the phrase unconditional positive regard, right? Just treating a human being, meeting them where they're at, being non-judgmental in a radical way. That would be those top three circles. What motivational interviewing brings to helpers that is different from any other approach is that fourth circle, the bottom circle. In this slide, it says evocation. It's a word meaning to draw out. So there's a presumption that in working with a person who's facing a change, that it is not my job to tell them why they need to change. It is not my job to persuade them to change. They already know. And that's what we wanted to try to communicate today, was that in this part of partnership, where I'm coming alongside a person who's seeking my services, that as much as humanly possible, I do want to be beside them and really communicate through the way that I do my job that I care about them. And that means I'm going to take the time to listen, even if they're quote unquote resistant, right? And the idea is that if I adopt that attitude that's kind of represented by these four circles, that the person will give me their own reasons for changing spontaneously. And the research has shown that. So that's really the basics of motivational interviewing. I thought we would do an exercise just to kind of communicate this a little bit more. So I got my Excel worksheet here, and we are going to make a list. I want you to think about, here, I'll stop sharing here for a second. So just everybody, in your work with people, whether they be colleagues, people walking through the door, clientele who you meet with, we have cases that are quote unquote difficult behaviors. And we have cases that we like, which were positive outcomes, fun, good, interesting cases. What words, and you can use the chat, or you can just, maybe the group can just like unmute and just give me some words and I'll type them up here. In your difficult cases, how would you describe the people in those difficult cases and their behaviors? Okay. So I'll think one example, argumentative. Say I'm an addiction counselor by trade, so everybody's walking in like this, What else?
Erratic behavior.
Erratic, absolutely. Others?
Confrontational.
Confrontational. So it's like a fight.
Desperate.
You say desperate? Desperate.
Aggressive.
Oh, aggressive?
Yep, desperate and aggressive.
Okay, both. Beautiful.
Strongly
beautiful.
grounded.
One more time.
Strongly grounded. Strongly grounded.
Strongly grounded.
It's
Emotional. I see that in the chat.
A hopeful.
Hopeful.
Yeah.
Excellent. Others around.
Liar.
Liars.
Liars. Truthful would have been a better word.
Untruthful will be a little bit
I was like,
generous.
person first was out the door and positive them. Doing accurate reporting.
Irrational.
Irrational.
I know it all. I know it all.
Oh yeah. Okay.
There are those in the chat too, Kevin. Distant and detached.
Oh,
defensive.
okay, great. We got plenty. This is a great sample. Distant, detached, defensive, and closed off. Okay. So just to review this a little bit. Sounds like we are pretty well in tune with the negative, difficult behaviors: argumentative, erratic, confrontational, aggressive, desperate, strongly grounded, emotional, hopeful, unreliable reporter, less than reliable, irrational, a know-it-all that's distant, detached, defensive, and closed off. What about the positive examples? When you have a good, go ahead. Consistent,
Engaged, positive,
engaged,
happy,
happy.
Self-reflection,
Yes, they're self-reflective, resilient,
open, when they're open to communicate, open to suggestions.
coachable. Yes. They show up, right? Let's see, what else? They're honest, willing.
caring.
Again,
They put in the work.
put in the work.
Determination,
Love it. They're motivated.
Caring.
Caring?
Yeah. They're self-sufficient. Hopeful.
Hopeful?
Send it out of bracket, but this is positive.
Oh, here we go.
Looking for help.
Looking for help?
solution thinking, like they want to find a
Yeah.
solution rather than self-pity or something.
You bet. Okay, they're open to the solution. They're not just going to be whining. Oh, I might just add, not that this ever happened, but whining and the negative, difficult. Okay, so here, this is a classic motivational interviewing exercise. Technically proficient. I want to add that in there. Thanks, Tony. So perhaps you were thinking of specific people when we were concocting this list of ways of being. These are styles of behavior. So the founder of MI, his name's Bill. He will generate this list and think of those clients, and then think of a hypothetical client, maybe in the near future, hypothetical coworker, hypothetical anything. Which would you prefer? Would you prefer one that is argumentative, erratic, confrontational, aggressive, desperate, emotional, lying, irrational, whining? Or would you prefer someone who's consistent, engaged, happy, self-reflective, resilient, open, communicative? They show up, they're coachable, determined, and motivated. So it's kind of a rhetorical question, but the trick to the question is we're describing the same person. That the research behind motivational interviewing shows that whichever person shows up, like if I'm talking about a client, for example, it's going to depend on how I am as the helper. As they researched over and over, case after case of various kinds, they found that it was the style of the helper that was most influential in determining the behavior of the other person. So what this tells us is a few different things. One is that we are needed. We as helpers are needed. We can positively influence a person toward change, regardless of where that person is at. And that could sound pretty radical, and I gotta say that also, that another piece that we say about motivational interviewing, especially from a teacher point of view, one who has drank the Kool-Aid, it's not a solution to everything. right? There's always going to be exceptions. There's always going to be people who they don't have mixed feelings. They're decided already, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the people who really are stuck in the middle, who think both ways. That's most people. There's always going to be people on the outside. Sometimes there's those miracles that come in and they've already done all their work. Sometimes there's those people who are just bound and determined to not change ever. We're talking about the people who have the arguments for and against changing. And that this spirit of partnership where I practice a way of walking with a person that is rooted and grounded in almost scientific respect, gives us the maximum chance of encountering cases that not only are effective and have change, but are actually enjoyable and pleasant and are efficient. It seems like it goes very slowly, and the research shows this is the fastest way of helping a person arrive at their own change, and that it comes from within them. So that exercise is, we'll have that again when we're in person at the training, but it's just called a taste of motivational interviewing. And it hopefully it can communicate what the reason that motivational interviewing becomes a really popular evidence-based practice is that the evidence is evidence that we want, right? That it actually becomes more of a human interaction. Kevin, did you have anything you wanted to add into this?
I did think one of the things that came up was a learning that we had from the previous communities about the relationship that exists. You know, we work in child welfare, and sometimes we come across the same families with different dates over and over and over again. And we had some testimony that came out of Chiloquin that really did provide some good insight for us that, you know, just the approaching conversations through the spirit of MI with particular families changed the trajectory, not entirely, right? But there was movement that reported back. So it's this change in practice that was able to reach clients that we typically continuously see over and over and over again. I can tell you some folks that we have those dynamics in our communities that's like, uh-oh, here comes this person. We know what they're bringing. I love the idea and of utilizing, and whether you put it on or you have the spirit of motivational interviewing, that it changes the dynamics of a conversation.
Thanks, Kevin. So that in a nutshell is the heart, really, of what motivational interviewing brings to the table. It is extremely simple. It's not a recipe to follow, it's a style. And it's intended to be adapted to whatever ethical norms, whatever procedural norms you have in place at your place of work. So I thought I might just like hand it over to the group just so we can get a sense of who you are. And if you have any experience in motivational interviewing and or like successes or questions, concerns about it, just right off the bat, walking into this. So I'm just going to open it up if anybody has anything they'd like to throw out there for conversation.
I have some experience with motivational interviewing. I've used it with youth at my prior employment, which was NARA Youth Facility.
Okay.
I try to utilize it with family who are in their addiction. That's a little bit more stickier because, you know, with family, there's like a stronger ties, I guess. Sometimes it gets challenging, I think, for me. Sometimes it's just challenging doing MI. But yeah, that's all I got.
Challenging to do MI. How do you mean, Molly Ann?
Well, like if I think too much about it, then I stumble. But when
Yeah.
it just flows, like when you're trying to, help them find their solution because they're the answer to their problems.
Yeah.
Nothing that I say or do is going to be the answer. Like, even though I think it may be, it's up to them. So sometimes, oh, that's my daughter. Sometimes that's where it's challenging.
Yeah, thank you so much for that example. That especially when we're in situations we're working with somebody who it's so obvious what they need to do, and we know that they're headed the wrong way, or that we have an idea for them that's just, it's a beautiful idea. It can feel like very inviting to get in there and tell them what to do. That's an outstanding example of one of the challenges of learning MI. It's not so much about learning how to do something, like acquiring a new skill. It's unlearning some of the things that we would naturally do, say, with family or friends, right? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Unsolicited advice, for example. We call that the writing reflex. It's a canoeing term. So like if you're in a two-person canoe and somebody leans over on one side, your immediate reflex is to right the canoe, push it over onto the other side so you don't tip over. It's just a natural thing to do. And that in motivational interviewing, one of the suggestions, one of the principles that's challenging is to refrain from that impulse to get in there and tell people what to do. The other one that I heard you say, Molly Ann, is that it's easy to get stuck in my own head when I'm talking to people. Because it's like I'm trying to listen to what they're saying, but I'm also trying to think in an MI way. So it's like I got a bunch of different plates that I'm trying to balance. And that's the practice of it. And that's, we have a lot of exercises, activities that try to break that down, right? And give us just a little bit of opportunity to see what it's like to practice it. Because really the image of MI is not so much like it's a tool, it's more like it's a musical instrument or an art that it just gets deeper and richer the more one practices it. And so that experience of getting caught up in my head while I'm trying to do it, especially early on, is a very common one. So thank you very much. What else?
I'm Maurice Bronson. I'm a
Maurice.
chemical dependency counselor at Yellowhawk Tribal Health Center. My experiences with MI would be to, I have a lot of mandated clients who I work with.
Yeah.
Just being able to identify where to reflect with these individuals so I don't get a, I don't want to say it's like unnecessary, but I want to aim for a positive reaction, right? So
Yep.
if I'm actively listening and I'm in attendance with these clients, even if it has to do with how we're facing each other in the room, I want to be sure that I'm able to reflect in a healthy way with these individuals who are mandated. That seems to be a huge barrier in working with these clients. Sometimes it becomes like resistance, and
Yeah.
to work through this each time that they come in for a session creates a relationship, right? And I want to build a relationship that's going to be promoting a healthy lifestyle and a recovery, a process of recovery. I don't want to, engage with the client and just be focused on certain topics, I guess you would say. A lot of them have their own issues, but building that rapport and opening the door for this individual to come in and create that safe space, I feel like it's huge. And it has a lot to do with how I present myself and how I'm influencing others, right? And
Mm,
so I just, I thought I would share that with you. Thank you.
thank you, Maurice.
Can I,
Yes, Kevin.
can I ask, thank you so much, Maurice. That was one of the questions that I don't want to put you on the spot, but I also would ask here. You made a comment about active listening and reflecting in a healthy way when you're engaged with clients or in this partnership. Is there an example that you can provide of language that you would use in terms of reflecting in a healthy way? And I know that it's tough without having a setting, but if you could give an example of what it means to reflect in a healthy way.
Well, you could always ask a client or an individual if they could tell you a little more about a situation. Can you tell me a little bit more about your drinking? I hear you say this, but could you explain to me a little bit more about, what this situation means to you? What does this look like to you? Things like that. I feel like people who have similar situations are often ambivalent about change, right?
Mhm.
And so we have to address them and meet them where they're at. And sometimes it could be a little bit difficult to even get the client to identify that they have a problem. And so asking them to explain more, about what their situation is like seems to be helpful.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I feel like with these kind of points, it when it brings up more questions for me, I feel like we're on we're on a good path, because now I begin to think, if we're reflecting in a healthy way, what does it look like when we're reflecting in an unhealthy way, right? I don't want to set up a binary relationship, but that truly is, I think about what is it that I'm doing that if I'm reflecting in an unhealthy way. That's just a rhetorical question.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I feel like we're kind of actually doing some role playing with some reflective listening right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Oh, we're off mute.
I mean, so much of when they train us how to train MI is basically to just do it. When engaging in conversations, there just simply is a way of engaging that is reflective. As a fellow substance use professional by training, I can very much relate to when someone comes in and is to meet them where they're at. I'm just very sensitive to the power of reflections, and we're going to hear a lot about that more than an open-ended question, is there a way to turn that, not that the question is wrong at all, because like what I heard, like even in the chat, I'm curious as to what you meant when you said ... right? That's kind of inviting a question, but really that's a good question in a motivational interviewing point of view, because like Maurice was talking about, it draws more out of the person. Now, it's possible to draw more of the status quo out of a person. So that's where the art of MI comes out, because often when people are talking and they have mixed feelings about something, they're going to give me both arguments at exactly the same time, sometimes even in the same sentence. They'll be like on one hand, on the other hand, and how to roll with that without, like Molly-Ann was talking about, getting all wrapped around the axle in my own head, trying to keep track of all of that. It's just that there is a sense in motivational interviewing where we can relax. And what I really heard what Maurice said in there about creating a space that's safe, my guess is that everybody here understands what that means and has our own way and our own style of already doing that. And what MI would say is, yes, that, and let's do it more. Create that space and then help them go deeper. If we don't have that safe space, there's not going to be any chance of a connection. And so that connection, we'll see, is the essential ingredient in going anywhere further in motivational interviewing. So we spend a lot of time on that first moment of connection, how to do that. Yeah. What else? How are we doing on time as well? Kevin, we got about 9 minutes until the top of the hour, just so you know.
Yeah, we're good. We're rocking and rolling here. Are there any other questions or comments in terms of to present?
I would say that, you know, having experience trying to use it when you're working with individuals, like, let's say, chronic health conditions and or individuals that need behavior change in terms of their behavior affecting their children's. It's just like any other thing. Practice makes perfect. You know, and having the, I guess, the desire and will to do self-reflection on your communication styles. And it does make a difference in creating that safe space, because sometimes our words mean something different than maybe what we meant them to be. And being honest with the people that you're working with, like, prime example was yesterday. What Molly Ann was talking about, your brain's working while you're trying to listen. And we're trying to listen to respond. And then sometimes I think we have to stop and listen to hear rather than respond. I think is that place where you go from maybe, I don't know. I just think that's what happened to me yesterday. And I just had to say, I'm going to pause here for a minute because I'm really thinking on how to respond appropriately and being honest of, I have this training and I'm trying to use it in the best way to help you and your family. It's an honest thing of like, I'm working on perfecting my skill, and this is what it is like, just as they are trying to work on perfecting a skill of their own to be a better person.
Listening to understand.
Yeah.
And that's a skill.
Listening to understand.
To me, motivational interviewing is peeling the onion. So my opinion really should never matter. My repeating what I hear you say, help me understand that further, so that I'm not giving my opinion. And the more you repeat back to a person, the more they'll fill in the blank.
Well put. Yeah, they know we have opinions.
Right.
It says it over the door when they walk into our clinics, and then like they know we're biased. They already know that.
Right.
We don't have to advertise that. And they, if they're showing up, they probably have at least a part of them that agrees with that. Even if it's 1%, they're there. So there's some sort of motivation there. So that's so important, just being that selective and self-aware, like Brittany's writing in the chat. Self-awareness, not just for them, but for us as well. Right? It's okay to be biased. I have opinions. I get paid to be biased for your sobriety, for example. If I wasn't, I'd be stealing. You know, it's okay to be biased, but it's like how we use that. Our very presence in a work setting, when a client comes in, there's already that power dynamic that kicks in. So this is where what they would call almost a spirit of neutrality. It seems like a spirit of neutrality when we're, especially at first, when somebody's coming in and just trying to feel us out and see if we're trustworthy or not. That could mean that we need to put the brakes on and just, it might feel like we're going way too slow by just talking about things that may even seem like they're off topic. But what we're really doing is developing that rapport, that connection. In MI, that's called engagement, but use whatever word you want. That's another thing with MI. It's like there's a book written about it. There's all these words to describe it, but really the words are secondary to the experience. So we want to really be careful to, we're going to present motivational interviewing words just so we have a common language. That is not at all to suggest that people don't understand how to connect. This is really more just the ability and power of connection turns out to be way more powerful than we previously thought. So, yeah.
We have about 4 minutes here. We want to be conscious of other folks in your time. One of the things that does remind me is there was some comment, I think it was Deanne, that talked about, really being reflective about the language that we're using. It really brought me right back to, I'm relatively new in this MI journey and learning. And there are times in the practice when we're doing trainings and I grew up in, and I'll do an exercise where I have to really be, you can hear it in my tone, you can hear it in my cadence of my voice, of really trying to take a step back and really try to practice reflections and the oars. And it reminds me of, and it kind of prompts me to think about this term that Kevin Tomlin and I use about developing an MI practice, about taking reps and how important it is to take those reps. We've seen we've been in communities. We know that people have responded well to the training. We know that it aligns with so much of our native sensibilities and worldviews. So there is a good alignment. We do the 2-day training, 3-day training, we're doing great. And then the training team leaves, you're all there. And then in some communities, what we've had is we've really kind of had this, this, I don't want to say drop off, but we've had this drop off in practice. And it's the importance that we talk about. I'm really realizing in my own MI journey to really begin to practice. Some of us that aren't clinicians, that aren't in that setting, we don't get the opportunity on a day-to-day basis to build that confidence. So it's taking those reps, I feel like. And that's really what stuck with me around what Dion had commented. Thank you very much. Y'all, it's been so wonderful to spend some time with you. Again, this is the first installment. We will meet again next week to discuss the other half, or the other processing of the spirit of MI. I would like to take the opportunity to open the floor for anybody to close, or if there were any final thoughts.
No, I just want to thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And
Thank you all. I just encourage you to, mull this over for the next week and, just casually in your own brain. And if things come up, questions, maybe do some Googling on MI, because this is just the preliminary, just getting the ball rolling. So we're going to come back in a week and I'll have my agenda. But if you guys got questions, that makes it so much more relevant, interesting. So really looking forward to continuing the conversation.
To be honest, I have a question. Is it just conversations, or will we actually be putting it to practice in these sessions?
Yeah, practice is coming. Absolutely. That's actually a really good
That's
question.
the only way I learn.
Yes.
Been to lots of motivational interviewing trainings, and I didn't get it until we did it.
There you go.
Like sit there and you're interviewing somebody, it's so much better. So I just want to get to that part because that's the way.
Thank you. Yes.
April. Oh, okay, gotcha.
So I guess maybe
Yeah.
that was I think a little bit of information that the folks online and here in this room is about 1.5 years ago. It's been quite a while now. We did like a pre-assessment to see where everybody was at. And we had such a wide range from, I don't know what MI is, to I've had some training, to I'm trying. And so that's why we're doing these. And then there'll be 2 days of the MI training. And then the 3rd day is for supervisors to see how supervisors will support staff and us supporting each other to really make this a practice, because this is part of the department's one of the strategic plans is to implement this practice within our organization, specifically with DCFS. So it'll be an ongoing thing.
Yeah, to be evidence.
Great point, though. Yes, practice. It's coming.
It's tough to do it when you don't practice it all the time.
Absolutely. It's
It is a
just like any other art, you know. So hopefully that got some juices flowing, and we'll pick it up again in a week.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Am I minion 1 or minion 2? I guess we'll figure that out later.
Does anybody want to close us out in a good way?
They're all dropping off.
They're dropping off.
They're dropping off in a good way.
Anybody?
Nina, close us out.
All right, Nina's gonna close us out in a good way.
What did you say? People online?
Just want to say, thank you, Creative, for this meeting that we had, open up our eyes and our mind and our heart to all the thoughts and the words shared today. And we look forward to the next one.
That's good.
Oh, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. I'm gonna log off now.
Thanks, Maurice.
Thank you.